What I'm about to walk you through today is a single calculation, one piece of conservative arithmetic that once you see it, you cannot unsee. And when you understand what this number means for silver, for gold, for the dollar in your pocket, and for every decision Washington has made for the last 20 years, everything about how you look at money is going to shift. I'm not talking about a prediction pulled from thin air. I'm not talking about some wild fantasy number designed to get clicks. I'm talking about hard history, publicly available data, and math so simple a 7th grader could check it on a calculator. And when you run that math, silver doesn't land at $100. It doesn't land at $200. It doesn't even land at $500. The number that falls out of this equation, using the most conservative, watered down, meet them in the middle assumptions possible, is $1,973 per ounce. Now, I know it just happened in your head. You flinched. You maybe laughed. Maybe you rolled your eyes. Good. Because that reaction, that disbelief, is exactly the gap between where the market is today and where the math says it should be. And that gap is either the greatest mispricing in modern financial history, or it's a lie. And by the end of this video, I'm going to let you decide which one it is. Before we start talking about precious metals, hey, James here, and this is Noble Metals, and you're getting value from these breakdowns? Please hit that subscribe button right now. That one click helps this channel reach more people who need to hear that. Tell me in the comments right now, where in the world are you watching from? I want to know. Are you in Texas? Are you in London? Are you watching this from Australia? The modern financial system is built on layers of trust, policy intervention, and historical momentum, rather than purely physical backing. Many people rarely question what actually supports the value of national currency in everyday life. Money today functions more like a network agreement rather than a directly commodity-backed asset. Historically, currencies were strongly connected to physical reserves such as gold stored in government vaults. These reserves created confidence because they represented measurable, verifiable wealth rather than institutional promises. Economic stability was partly maintained because money creation was naturally limited by available reserves. Over time, financial systems evolved toward credit expansion models. Governments gained more flexibility in fiscal management, but this flexibility also introduced long-term structural risk. During major global conflicts such as World War II, monetary structure still retained a connection with gold reserves. At that time, approximately 51% of federal obligations were conceptually supported by physical gold holdings. This structure played a psychological and economic role in maintaining international trust in the United States dollar. War economies require massive government spending, and financing such operations without destabilizing currency confidence is extremely difficult. The presence of strong gold reserves helped stabilize foreign trade relationships and encourage global adoption of the dollar as a primary reserve currency. This arrangement allowed the United States to build a dominant position within international financial architecture during the mid-20th century. Today, the United States national debt has expanded beyond $39 trillion. Numbers at this scale are difficult for human perception to process because trillion-level values exceed typical everyday financial experience. Public discussion often treats such figures as statistical background information rather than structural economic signals. The gradual normalization of extreme debt levels reduces public emotional reaction. However, structural economists warn that persistent expansion of liabilities without proportional productive growth may create systemic pressure. Political systems often prefer short-term economic stability over long-term contraction because fiscal tightening can lead to unemployment, reduce consumer spending, and social instability. If historical monetary relationships were hypothetically restored, analysts sometimes calculate implied asset valuation requirements. For example, achieving a 51% gold backing level relative to federal debt would require approximately $20 trillion worth of gold reserves. The United States currently maintains about 261.5 million ounces of physical gold storage. Dividing total required valuation by reserve quantity produces a theoretical gold price estimate, around $75,000 per ounce. This calculation is not intended as market prediction, but rather as structural mathematical illustration. The purpose is to demonstrate scale imbalance between modern financial obligations and historic historically anchored reserve models. The historical gold to silver valuation relationship provides additional perspective on commodity equilibrium pattern. Many ancient and medieval monetary systems operated near a 19-to-1 silver to gold ratio. This relationship was influenced by mining production efficiency, trade circulation patterns, and coinage legislation across civilizations. Modern markets often display much wider ratios, sometimes reaching 80 or 90 to 1. Such deviation raises questions about long-term commodity price stability. If gold valuation were hypothetically positioned near $75,000 per ounce and historical ratios re-emerged, silver could mathematically approach multi-thousand-dollar price ranges. These projections represent structural arithmetic rather than speculative forecasting. Some analysts prefer conservative modeling scenarios to avoid extreme projection criticism. In such compromise models, estimated gold valuation may be reduced by 50% from $75,000 to approximately $37,500 per ounce. Applying similar proportional reduction to silver projections produces an estimated target near $1,973 per ounce. This compromise assumes partial policy correction and slower structural adjustment. Even under this conservative assumption, silver valuation remains significantly above current market levels. The purpose of presenting moderated scenarios is to demonstrate that structural arithmetic remains strong, even under cautious assumptions. Government spending continues, expanding across multiple economic sectors, including defense, social programs, infrastructure development, and interest servicing. Defense expenditure alone has reached multi-trillion scale allocation ranges in modern budgets. The second largest mandatory federal expense is debt interest payment, which reflects borrowing costs accumulated from previous fiscal cycles. This creates a recursive borrowing mechanism where new debt issuance is often required to service existing obligations. Such financial structure resembles compounding liabilities rather than productive investment growth. Critics argue that without structural reform, long-term fiscal sustainability may become increasingly difficult. Tariff policy is frequently presented as economic protection strategy, but its practical impact is more complicated. Tariffs function similarly to consumption taxes because importers generally transfer cost increases through supply chains. When border taxation rises, production expenses also rise. Businesses may absorb part of the cost, but final consumer pricing often increases. Small enterprises face higher vulnerability because their operational margins are limited. Employment patterns may also shift if manufacturing costs grow significantly. Although political discourse sometimes frames tariffs as national economic strength, many macroeconomic models associate heavy tariff structures with domestic inflationary pressure. The modern financial system depends heavily on continuous credit expansion. Economic activity across multiple sectors requires liquidity circulation, which is maintained through borrowing and monetary issuance. Sudden restriction of credit flow could produce rapid contraction across markets. This creates structural dependency similar to mechanical engines requiring constant fuel supply. If borrowing stops completely, large institutional systems may experience operational instability. Supporters of expansionary policy argue that flexible credit structures allow crisis management and technological development funding. Critics argue that perpetual expansion inside finite resource environments eventually generates mathematical imbalance. Precious metal markets are influenced by both monetary policy and industrial consumption. Silver is extensively used in modern technological manufacturing, including renewable energy systems, electronic circuits, medical equipment, and military technology. Unlike gold, which is often stored as reserve wealth, silver is frequently consumed during production. Once silver is embedded into manufactured products, recovery rates remain limited. This consumption characteristic gradually tightens global supply. Meanwhile, industrialization across developing and developed economies continues increasing silver demand. Market price suppression discussion often appears within financial communities. Structural price influence may occur through derivative trading volume, liquidity positioning, and institutional strategy coordination. Large financial organizations possess tools that can influence short-term price behavior. However, long-term suppression typically becomes difficult when physical demand exceeds artificial liquidity capacity. Historical commodity cycles demonstrate that prolonged pressure buildup can lead to sudden price adjustment phases. These phases are usually marked by high volatility and rapid repricing. Small individual investors often adopt long-term accumulation strategies rather than speculative leverage approaches. Many choose to purchase physical metal periodically using personal savings. This strategy reduces exposure to margin requirements and short-term volatility manipulation. Historical market research suggests that long-term holders often benefit during structural revaluation cycles. Physical asset ownership provides continuity because material commodities cannot be erased through financial contract settlement mechanism. This makes physical storage strategy attractive for risk-conscious participants. Future monetary system evolution remains uncertain. Some economists believe technological financial infrastructure will stabilize current credit-based architecture. Others predict structural revaluation of hard assets if debt growth continues exceeding productive output. Regardless of prediction differences, mathematical relationships between reserve limitation and liability expansion remain observable. Market timing cannot be predicted precisely, but historical cycles show structural forces eventually influence pricing behavior. Financial literacy does not require advanced specialization. Basic arithmetic understanding can reveal long-term macroeconomic trend. I'm not here to build a cult of followers. I'm here to build a community of thinkers. At Noble Metals, I provide the raw data, but I want you to bring the hard questions. We live in an era where debt is sold as wealth, and clicks are sold as value. Don't just take my word for it. I encourage you to be a skeptic. Check my sources, challenge the mainstream narrative, and verify every claim I make, because at the end of the day, a truth you've discovered for yourself is far more valuable than any hype or financial trend. Real gold is rare, but real truth is rarer. Let's find it together. This is Noble Metals. I'll see you in the next one. Stay skeptical, stay informed.